Hello and welcome to another video on these brand new HobbyZone micro trainers. So we have the HobbyZone Micro XCub 450 and the 450 millimeter P-51 Mustang. So what I want to do today is I wanted to cover a couple of what I call tips and tricks. So kind of those little things you learn from using the product that maybe you didn't know when you got it out of the box, and some of those things that maybe not in the manual that you just kind of learn after spending some time with it. So I've been flying these for about a month now. I've given them to a number of different people to try out, varying levels of success, and that's probably because I've given it to people with varying levels of flying experience. I've given it to a 10-year-old that has never flown an airplane or even tried an RC sim or anything in their entire life. I've given it to a 12-year-old with some flight experience, a 14-year-old who's just getting started in it, and then a couple different adults as well. So we've given it kind of a wide range of different people to try these trainers out. And there's things I've learned along the way of flying these and having others fly them, and I thought this is a good opportunity to kind of come back and cover a few of those topics with everyone. So the first thing you guys will notice is there are no landing gear on these planes. I have removed the landing gear from both these guys. So a couple things I realized by doing that. One, P-51 Mustang with the gear down flying around, well, it looks silly. Let's be honest. I mean, if you're going to fly a fighter plane, one of the most beautiful fighter planes ever designed, you don't want the wheels hanging down. But besides aesthetics, there's actually a functional reason for it too. The landing gear caused quite a bit of drag hanging down underneath the aircraft, and as well as kind of that drag somewhat pitches the nose a little forward because the landing gear hanging down here and the air is moving against it, so it's kind of creating like almost like a little pendulum type thing and tipping the airplane. So there's that part of it when it's in the air. The other part is that if you're going to land on grass, which if you are going to fly these, I highly recommend you fly it over grass only, and I'll cover that in a little bit. But if you're going to take off from the grass, the wheels really don't work all that well. So what I actually recommend doing, and it's the same thing I do for my ultra micro warbirds too, is take the gear off and go ahead and hand launch it, and then just belly land it into the grass rather than try to use the wheels. If you land in the grass with the wheels on, it will nose over and the prop will come off like intended, but then you have to go find the prop. So it looks better, it flies better, and it doesn't really work all that well in grass anyway, so just go ahead and take the wheels completely off the Mustang. You do the same thing for the Cub for the exact same reason, even though it looks very funny to have a Cub without the landing gear on here. It does look a little funny. So it's not so much aesthetics on the Cub as it is on the Mustang, but more functional in the sense that those gear hanging down here do cause quite a bit of drag, and especially I noticed it the most on landing when you start to pull the power back. Because these aircraft are pretty dense foam, they have a little bit of weight to them, more weight than I would expect from like a similar sized ultra micro. They don't have as well of a kind of a smooth glide slope, and they don't kind of slide down into the ground as easily with the power off. You really got to fly the aircraft all the way down. So because of that, you're going to end up kind of carrying some more speed, and you're going to land just a little bit quicker, and you're going to flip over with the landing gear. So I just decided, let's just forgo the landing gear altogether. And hand launching the airplane in beginner mode is really super simple. And it also fixes the problem of trying to find a suitable surface to take off from. You do need a pretty smooth surface. Like I have a fabric runway, it works pretty good on a fabric runway. Cement, of course, it would work pretty good with. But you don't want to really land on cement and tip the airplane over. And if you have a problem with the airplane in flight, you don't want to go down hard on the cement. Both of these aircraft have hit the ground probably from a good solid 15, 20 feet up in the air, landed in the grass. We picked them back up again, tossed them back in the air, and they kept on flying. There is not a mark on these things. And they have probably, I don't know, each one of these has probably have 12, 15 flights on it. And most of those flights were by people with very little to no experience, and we plunked them into the grass. No damage at all. So I wouldn't recommend using the landing gear, flying from a hard surface, landing on a hard surface, or flying over a hard surface. Go find yourself a nice grassy area, something like a soccer field or something like that that's got some nice tall cushioning grass. To hand launch the airplane, you have it in beginner mode. Go to full throttle, kind of hold the airplane up by your head here, and just kind of do a nice follow through. I'll kind of show this direction here to make it a little bit easier to see. Because actually hand launching can trip people up, but it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it, right? So you just kind of hold the airplane back, a little bit of an up angle on it. I would say, you're probably looking at 5-10 degrees max, almost flat, full power, and just go ahead and give it a toss. And when you release it, make sure that the airplane is released either, at about that 10 degree angle or just a little flat. You don't want to if you toss it like this, you're going to have a bad day. If you're going to toss it like this, you're also going to have a bad day. So you want to make sure it leaves your hand in a nice tossing motion, pretty much straight out or just a few degrees up. And when you do that, the airplane will climb out beautifully. In beginner mode, it is awesome. Like, there's no problem at all. The airplane climbs out and it is fantastic. And that's the same for both these airplanes. A nice hand launch. You don't have to throw it. You're not a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Just a nice toss and the airplane flies great. Keep it over the grass. Land on the grass and you'll be fine. Now, that does bring up another interesting thing that I learned along the way, is that because these props, these breakaway props on here that are designed to pop off when you hit something, when you land in the grass, they're pretty much going to pop off every single time. That's okay. But the problem is that the all black prop with that little bit of a red spinner, it usually always, now that I can't get the prop off at the moment, but whatever, they always seem to land face down. So the red spinner, while you say, well, that should be easy to find, well, when that's down inside the grass, it's not as easy to find. So what I did, you can see on both aircraft here, I'll kind of hold it up here, I painted the prop tips neon yellow. I just bought some neon yellow fluorescent craft paint here, and I painted the tips of the prop, both front and back of the props here. They are fluorescent yellow. I painted the spinner chrome using just a chrome marker. And then I also put some chrome stripes on the back side of the prop as well. So when it does face downward, you have at least something in the grass that you can find. Since doing that, I have not lost a prop since. Before I did that, I lost one of these guys in the grass, and for a whole 2 weeks, it was out in the grass, unable to be found, and eventually I did find it and bring it back. But after learning that these can be kind of difficult, especially in the evening with low light, they can hide in the grass remarkably well. So neon yellow prop tips, maybe some chrome or some other bright colors on here, make it a little bit easier for you to see in the grass, and you'll be fine. A few other things I learned while flying the airplanes, because they are a little bit heavier, and they have what we call a little bit higher wing loading, in the sense that the area of the wing, given the weight of the airplane, they do need to be flown just a little bit quicker. So normally I would fly something like this, I'd be like, 50% power, fly it at cruise, and you're probably pretty good. For the most part, you're probably not too far off, except for the fact that if you're turning pretty steeply, even in beginner mode, or if you pull the power back just a little bit too far, they will stall on you pretty easily. So I recommend flying maybe closer to 60 to 75% power at cruise. So the airplane's going to be a little bit quicker than you're probably used to, but that's okay. The advantage of that is that your chances of stalling the airplane, and when I say stall, I don't mean the engine stop, I mean aerodynamic stall, where the airplane is no longer producing lift, it pitches over, and if you're a beginner pilot, it's going to go into the ground if you're not familiar with how to recover. So fly at about 60 to 70% power as cruise, 100% power for your climb, 60 to 70% for your flying around, and then when you come in for a landing, try to maybe bring it down to only about 30% or so, land with some power on, and then just about, if you're about 2 feet off the ground, then you can go ahead and chop the power. It's going to have enough momentum at that point to come in for a landing, nicely flare into the grass, and you'll be fine. What I found is trying to fly this with the power off, it doesn't glide all that well. My nephew tried it. and it stalled pretty severely on him. It was coming at him. He panicked. He pulled the power back, and it stalled and came down from about 15, 20 feet and hit the grass pretty hard. No damage done. He did the right thing in the sense of the plane was coming at him, and he panics. He knew that the flight line in the pit area was behind him. He got himself kind of in a bad spot, and he knew that, well, if I ditch the power and the airplane will not cross over the flight line to the pit area. So he did the right thing, just got himself in a bad situation, but it kind of showed that by pulling the power back, his glide slope was pretty limited. So fly with a little bit more power than you would expect. When you get done with your flight and you're coming in for a landing, hold some power on until you get about a foot or two off the ground, pull it back to idle. You'll have enough momentum to do a nice landing. If you pull the power back at about 20 or 30 feet up in the air and try to land it, it's going to be very difficult to try to get the airplane down, especially if you're a beginner. So just try to land with some power on versus power off. You'll do a lot better. Plus, it sets you up well for when you get into more advanced airplanes, like a large-scale P-51 Mustang. You got to fly all the way to the ground with the power on. So that's not a bad thing at all. Some of the bigger trainers, you can most certainly pull the power completely off on final approach and just idle it all the way in, and it's fine. These are a little bit different, so just protect yourself from that. The other thing is that you don't have a timer on the transmitter or any telemetry telling you when your battery is low. So my recommendation is take your phone and set a timer on your phone. 5 to 7 minutes is the recommended flight time. Now, of course, if you fly 100% throttle, it's going to be closer to 5 minutes or under. If you try to cruise around at the lowest throttle setting possible, you can probably get a little over 7. So because of that, I would set the alarm for 5 minutes. And when the 5-minute alarm goes off, come in for a landing, right? That way you know you're safe. That way, even if you came in for a landing, you go, oh man, that's a terrible approach, I'm going to go around again, you got plenty of battery to do so. If you set the timer for 7 minutes and you flew a little bit more aggressively and it goes off and you have to land, you got a bad approach, you might already be kind of approaching the end of that battery's life and run into some problems. So I always say, err on the side of caution. Set your timer for 5 minutes. Give yourself enough opportunity to come in for a landing. After you do come in for a landing, and let's say the prop does happen to stay on, just go ahead and check to make sure that it is snug, that all the little prongs are holding on to that before your next flight. So I've had it where I didn't do that check. The prop was on. I thought all was good. I powered up, and the prop flew off. If I would have checked that in my pre-flight check before, in between flights, that would have prevented, because I'm like, oh man, it was clearly not pushed on all the way. So after every landing, check to make sure your prop is good before your next flight. And of course, when you do that, make sure your battery is taken out and disconnected, so you have no power going to your prop here when you check to make sure that works. Another thing I wanted to make sure I covered, because it's come up a few times on questions, if you're applying the throttle and the motor isn't turning when you first start it up, take the throttle on the transmitter, move it all the way up, it will beep. Move it all the way down, it will beep. The speed control is now armed, the ESC will be working, and you can now add some throttle. So that's kind of a throttle cut safety feature. So if you do need to ever reset the gyro, there are instructions on how to do that. I'm not going to cover that because it's kind of more of an advanced thing that you may never have to do. I have not done it to these aircraft, but just to let you know that in the manual there is a procedure if you need to reset the gyro for one of these planes. You'll know that if you are flying and let's say the plane is just kind of all over the place, it doesn't seem to want to center itself, or you're flying and you let your hands off the stick and it's kind of doing one of these numbers and everything is trimmed, something's just not right. You can try to look at recalibrating the stability gyro in the airplane as well. So that's really about it. I think I've covered a lot of the tips and tricks that I have learned. One thing that I found to be kind of interesting is giving these aircraft, I gave the Cub actually to someone who's relatively new to flying and didn't have a lot of previous experience to go on, right? They don't have 50 airplanes and 2,000 flights in their logbook, so they didn't have really any expectation. I handed them the Cub, and he flew it absolutely beautifully. I mean, it was as if he's been flying for years. He didn't know what to expect. He just flew the airplane. He flew it in beginner mode, and he did awesome. It was incredible to see that because as soon as I started flying it, I kept thinking, well, I would like to trim that or adjust that, or maybe I would do this for Expo and I would adjust that rate. And I'm thinking in my head of all the things I would do if this was a bigger airplane to get it to fly exactly how I want it. This person didn't have any of the idea of how to do any of that. They just simply flew the airplane in beginner mode, and they did awesome with it. So that was exciting to see. They're just starting off in their flying career, and they were able to fly this thing remarkably well. I gave the Mustang to my nephew Karsten, who's got he hasn't flown anything else this year, but last year he soloed his 1.3 meter carbon cub after quite a bit of time with an instructor. He's not flown anything else this year. I handed him the P-51 Mustang, and his eyes got huge because he's like, oh wow, a fighter plane! I want to fly a fighter plane. I've never flown a fighter plane. He was geeking out over the fact that he was going to fly a Mustang. And he did remarkably well with it. Besides the fact of just coming at him and needing to bail out of that. But otherwise, we picked the airplane back up, threw it in the air again, and he did remarkably well with it as well. He's never flown a Mustang. He doesn't know how a Mustang should fly, and he did really well with it too. What's interesting is even though these aircraft are extremely different, right? Mustang, Cub, they actually fly remarkably similar. I don't know exactly how or what kind of magic voodoo makes that happen, but they actually fly really close. Normally you would say you never ever start with a warbird as a trainer. That's a terrible idea. This is actually pretty good. This is also pretty good. They're pretty good together. I'm actually shocked by that you could easily fly either one of these airplanes and they're remarkably close in terms of how they fly, how easy they are to fly. When you take the landing gear off both, they get even more similar to each other. So if you're on the fence over which one to buy, you can't go wrong with either one. Neither one of these has an advantage over the other. They have good visibility. You can see them well. The invasion stripes show up well. The orange and silver shows up well. There's really no advantage one way or the other than personal preference. If you're like myself or my nephew Karsten and you look at this and go, oh my God, I'm going to fly a fighter plane, yeah, you're going to have to buy the Mustang. If you say, you know what, I think I'm more comfortable with the classic lines of a Cub like this guy here, and I like the orange, and a Cub just looks like a nice friendly airplane to fly, go with this one. You can't go wrong with either one of these two. So if you are looking online or you're at your hobby shop and you got both available, pick either one up. You can't go wrong. If only one's available, you can't go wrong either. So the aircraft are a lot better than I was expecting in that aspect, because yes, you can learn to fly on a P-51, and yes, you most certainly can learn on the XCub as well. So that's really kind of covers everything I had to cover for tips and tricks. They're really a lot of fun airplanes. It just takes a little bit to get used to. If you got a lot of flying experience, you're going to go into it probably a little bit different than if you are someone who's relatively new, who doesn't have a lot of experience with it. I found that was one of the more fascinating things, is that the low-time pilots really did remarkably well with these airplanes. And that's exactly what they're designed for. They're designed for people who are just getting into the hobby. This is their first airplane. They want to fly it. And if you can master these guys if you can master these in intermediate mode, experience mode is, even for me, I find it to be a little tricky. So I would say if you can master either of these two airplanes in intermediate mode, you are 100% ready to move up into the next stage airplane. Don't feel you need to master experience mode before you move up. Experience mode to me was a little bit difficult. Intermediate mode is actually the mode that I thought these things were a lot of fun in. So if you could fly in intermediate mode in either one of these two airplanes, you are ready to graduate into the next series of airplanes. So that could be something like the E-flite 1.5 meter Timber, the end of the UMX series, maybe not the Warbirds, but most certainly the UMX series airplanes, the 1.3 meter Carbon Cub, the Habu STS, even though it's a trainer as well. That would be an easy airplane if you wanted to fly an EDF after flying these. Those are great trainers as well, first-time planes, but you could learn a lot from these guys here and find out, am I really going to want to be in this hobby and this is something I want to do, these are most certainly an awesome way to get started. So if you guys got any questions on them, leave me some comments. I'm most certainly going to get even more pilots on these things and get some more flights in, because they're a lot of fun. And I tell you what, it's exciting to see someone when you hand them a P-51 Mustang and they've always dreamed of flying a fighter plane and they go fly it. And it's equally exciting to have someone who's never flown an airplane before and you hand them a Cub and you say, go ahead and fly, and you watch them succeed. It's pretty fun. So these are definitely some pretty exciting product for HobbyZone. They're not rebranded, the V name, whatever those things are. They're not rebranded that. I've heard a lot of comments about what they think they are. They're not those things. So these are a great way to get started from a very well-known company that's got some really good support behind it. And if you need spare parts, more batteries, extra props, they're all available. You're not going to have to wait, to get that kind of stuff. So if you guys got any questions, leave them in your comments below.